Hello, and welcome back to Noteworthy Fiction. My name is Nicole, and today I am going to be talking about books that I'm considering unhauling. So I have here next to me my little book cart. You can just barely see it. I'm in a really weird setup here, so I will show you the books as we go along, and if I can figure it out, I'll show you the shelf. Maybe I'll insert a clip. That sounds like super fancy editing, so I promise nothing. So let's get into it in no particular order. I'm just gonna go shelf by shelf. Hopefully, I'll be able to get these off easily. The first book that's on my shelf here is The Far Pavilions by MMK. Part of the reason that this book is at risk of being unhauled for me is honestly just the simple way that it's published. Do you see that? Like the words go all the way into the crack of the book. Um, there's no margin on the inside. And this may not be a big deal to you, but I have really bad carpal tunnel, and I can't be trying to break a spine and force a book open. I mean, I really have to break the spine on this book to make this work. And it was just becoming a really frustrating read for me just for that purpose alone. So it's a weird reason, but for that reason alone, I may end up unhauling this book. The next book on my cart is In Pursuit of Jefferson. This is, as it says, traveling through Europe with the most perplexing founding father. This is written by Dennet Baxter, and can you see me reading the book backwards? but this book is about this one guy's journey where he discovers that Thomas Jefferson wrote a travel guide to Europe about 200 years ago, and the travel guide was called Hints to Americans Traveling in Europe. And Derek Baxter decided that he wanted to basically try and go and retrace uh, Thomas Jefferson's. Did I say Benjamin Franklin at one point? Probably not. But he wanted to go and retrace Thomas Jefferson's travels through Europe and sort of follow this guide and see what he found. I'm finding now I'm feeling conflicted about this book. Originally, I didn't read this, or I rather put it down because I was listening to the audiobook, which is how I usually listen to nonfiction. And it was kind of slow going. And I don't know, it was giving me a little bit of A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson vibes, but not quite as good. Um, but I don't know. The audiobook just wasn't holding me. And at the time, I think I also just didn't have a lot of opportunities that listening to an audiobook worked for me, so I put it down. But now I'm reading Clotel, which is a book written by an escaped slave about the legend of Thomas Jefferson um, having children by his slaves. And I will give Derek Baxter credit. He does talk about in the beginning of this book how even he has mixed feelings about Thomas Jefferson because of his history of holding slaves while simultaneously talking about how all men are created equal and free and da da da, basically talking up two sides of his mouth. So I do appreciate that Derek Baxter like doesn't shy away from that history and includes it. And he gives his own reasons for still wanting to do this. I may have to reread that section of the book to decide after reading Clotel whether at any point I'm going to want to be in pursuit of Jefferson. It's hard to say because this book really isn't about Jefferson. It's actually about Derek Baxter's own experience. And the likelihood of it being unhauled just seems to be growing. So there's that. The next book that's at risk of being unhauled is When I Was Puerto Rican. Now, if my husband watches this, he's going to be like, hey, you're not unhauling my book. No, I'm not. I'm just like removing it from my own bookshelf. We'll see. I don't know. My husband's Puerto Rican. I believe I bought this book for him. He read it in Spanish. We own two copies of this book, one in English, one in Spanish. And I still haven't read it. And it's by Esmeralda Santiago. And I believe it's her memoir. And I'd like to read it, but I just seem to keep not getting to it. It's another nonfiction, so I'm pretty sure that's why. Maybe I need to look and see if there's an audiobook. I would definitely rather listen to this as an audiobook than In Pursuit of Jefferson. It's also shorter. Now that I'm thinking about that, I'm going to put all my nonfiction together because nonfiction I tend to listen to on audiobook, and if I have to do an unhaul, I'm going to have a better idea of which nonfiction I'll unhaul. Anyway, when I was Puerto Rican, that's the Spanish title, uh, when I was Puerto Rican, at risk of being unhauled just because it's just taking up space and I'm not reading it. So there's that. Next book on here is Molokai. Molokai. I don't know how to say this. It's a Hawaiian name. And I don't know that I've ever heard anyone speak their language. Anyway, this is a historical fiction, maybe with some magical realism, that takes place in Hawaii. I think it's about the spirit of Hawaii, something like that. Can you tell I know basically nothing about this book? Anyway, it's contemporary historical fiction, which just isn't my most favorite genre, though the book did sound intriguing and I got it for a really good price. But it's on my cart because if there was something that I needed to unhaul because I didn't have space, it would probably be my more contemporary fiction. So there's that. Next book on my cart is The Signature of All Things. This is simply on there just because I was actually looking for another book by Elizabeth Gilbert. For the life of me, The Light Years. That's what it was. I was going to say, I couldn't remember what the book was. When I was shopping for the book, I couldn't remember what the book was. And I had heard of The Signature of All Things, but it was really The Light Years I was interested in reading. And then later on, when I read a further description of that book, decided that I didn't want to buy that book. Interruption to our normally scheduled program here. The Light Years is not by Elizabeth Gilbert. It's by Elizabeth Jane Howard. So unless they're the same person, which as far as I can tell they're not, that probably explains why I couldn't find the book when I was looking for it, which makes me want to read The Signature of All Things even less, because now it's definitely not the book or the author that I was actually trying to find. How do these things happen? I don't know. You have to be a book person to understand, I guess. Anyway, back to the video. And I realized I don't really want to read this book. I just got it because it was the only book that I found when I was looking for her other book. I bought it used. So it was 76 cents. So I thought, well, I liked Eat, Pray, Love, so why not? I don't know. It's at risk of being unhauled. The next book is The Revolution of, is it Marina M by Janet Fitch. I know nothing about this book other than what I read on the back. Um, it's about the Russian Revolution, which sounds kind of interesting to me. It's just like contemporary historical fiction. It's a nice chunky book, things that I like, but am I like, oh yeah, definitely need to get to this book soon? No, it can easily be replaced by something else and like so this is just over here to make space for other books that I'm more interested in reading. I hope I get to it. I may or may not. Next, I have, they're falling down. Uh, Water for Elephants. I was about to say like Water for Chocolate. Water for Elephants by Sarah Gruen. This again just falls onto the more contemporary side that I might not get to. Also, books that I can get at the library, and so maybe I should stop buying and taking up space. The next book on my list, Abundance by not by Marie Antoinette. Wouldn't that be fascinating? It's about Marie Antoinette, and it's by Sina Jeter Naslin. The reason this is on my cart is I was really excited about reading her other book, Ahab's Wife, after reading Moby Dick. And I started reading that and I just realized she is just way too floral, poetic, and all sorts of things. I started to read Ahab's Wife. I think I forced my way through a chapter of it and I was like, I just don't like her writing style. So this is over here because I'm really concerned that it's going to be the same writing style. Could I just read a chapter and put that to rest? Yes. Have I? No. Am I going to anytime soon? Nope, not unless I make myself. So to the card it goes. Another nonfiction book. Are we seeing a theme? I don't think so. I'm pretty sure there's nonfiction over there. Pointing over to where my TBR shelf is. Anyway, the next book is The Devil in the White City by Eric Larson. It sounds kind of creepy to me. That's honestly the only reason it's on this cart. I don't like creepy things, horror things, scary things. I get scared really easily. So I don't know. It's nonfiction, so I could audiobook it, but somehow that's, to me, that just sounds like it would be even creepier. So this is probably going to get unhauled. Like, it's very generous of me to put it over here on this cart because it's probably getting unhauled. The next book is The House Girl by Kara Conklin. So this book is about a house slave, I believe. Yeah, a 17-year-old house slave. Yeah. And which I find fascinating. I don't feel like there's a lot of books that feature as the main character a um woman who is a house slave in slavery time in America. I feel like more often than not, it's a slave who works in the fields. So I do think this is an interesting perspective. I think I had this as something that I'd recommend as a family book club read. I want to say I got it at a library book sale. Yeah, I did because there's the little old library card. Um, but it's just not something that I'm gonna get to anytime soon. And I've decided like I'm putting like a limit on how many books to potentially recommend to my family one day that I'm gonna keep on my bookshelf. So at some point this might get unhauled if I don't recommend it to my family first. The next book is The Miniaturist. I have heard a lot about this book from people on YouTube that I follow. It got a lot of publicity. Apparently, it's really good. This falls into the category of The Devil in the White City. It just sounds creepy to me, and I don't, I can't do it. Like, I'm not even sure why this is at risk of being unhauled. It's probably going to be unhauled. Like, I don't know that I can do this. So, if you think this is worth it and it's really not that creepy, let me know. But if it's creepy, please warn me. Like, please don't let me do that to myself. Okay, so that's that first little shelf that you can just barely see. I did resort them and put right here the three nonfictions that I mentioned so that now my nonfiction that's at risk of being unhauled is right there. I want easy access to that because when I'm looking for an audiobook, I tend to look for nonfiction and I always forget where it is. Moving on to the next shelf. First book there is Tarot Leblanc. So this was first published in 1490. It's a classic. This version was clearly republished in like the 70s or 60s. Like, look at that. Ooh, it's really shiny. Look at that little couple. That just screams 70s mass market paperback to me. The reason this is on my shelf to be unhauled is that I've learned that in terms of historical fiction, I don't tend to be a big fan of medieval period with knights and kings, and it's just not a favorite time period of mine for fiction. So I don't know. It just seems like it might not be my cup of tea. It'll probably get unhauled. The next book I have is Soul Mountain. Uh, this was written by a gentleman who was the winner of the Nobel Prize for Fiction. It's just a genre or a theme in fiction that I realize I might not like. Therefore, it's at risk of being unhauled. I'm going to stop saying at risk of being unhauled. Um, you get it. All right. The next book is Quicksilver by Neal Stephenson. This was a book that I picked up after hearing about Neal Stephenson and Snow Crash. I read a little of Snow Crash and did not like the writing style. That was science fiction. This is, I believe, science fiction slash historical fiction. So I'm hoping that the writing style might be slightly different. I have a lot of shiny books today, plus just a lot of sun glare right there. Anyway, I'm going to try and stop doing that to you. Um, so I'm hoping that the writing style in this will be different because I've heard good things about his books, and what I read of this book sounds interesting. I'm just concerned that the writing style may not be something that I like. The next book I have is The Night Watchman by Louise Erdrich. This kind of sounds interesting to me. I mean, she won a Pulitzer Prize, but I have thoughts about me and whether or not I actually like the Pulitzer Prize winners because I feel like I frequently don't like the writing style of the Pulitzer Prize winners. So I'm going to set this aside because I plan on doing a project with the Pulitzer Prize winners that I have. So as I come across them, I'm going to pull them out. Next, I have Perdido Street Station by China Melville. I've heard a lot about this book from people who love science fiction. I have come to realize that I'm not one of those people. I bought this after reading a couple of science fiction books and really liking them, but I've noticed there's a real huge difference between like really hardcore science fiction, and I'm concerned that this is one of those, and I don't like those. I want a book that has science fiction elements as opposed to heavy science. Like, I don't want to be doing math and calculations while reading a book. So that's this. It's not too long, but I just don't know that I'd ever get to it. And if it push came to shove, I'd unhaul it. The next book I have is The Other Black Girl. This sounds really interesting to me, but it's contemporary, I think, mystery thriller type of book, which again, I get scared easily, so that's one. And then two is I'm not a big fan of contemporary fiction. I bought this as a book to recommend to my family book club. So if I don't get to it anytime soon, again, the library has this. I can check it out when we go to read it. So we'll see. I think I am going to put any of the book club recommendations I have together on this shelf so I can keep an eyeball on those. The next book on my shelf surprised me that I put it there. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clark. I read Piranesi and really liked that. I heard really good things about this book that made me think I would like it, such as it has magical realism, takes place in Victorian England, is a book about magic, which I sometimes find interesting. It has pictures. I mean, what's not to like? You know, we as adults, we don't get pictures in our book very often anymore. So when we do, like, how fun. I started reading this. It may have been that I was super tired when I started reading this. It may have been something else. But it just wasn't working for me. It was too slow, I think, and too wordy, and my brain was just not working. So it's at risk of being unhauled because I do that with any book that I DNF for any reason, moves over to this cart. But this is one that probably won't get unhauled. Like, I'll probably hold on to it and eventually read it and get to it. But for now, here she lies. Next book on my list is March by Geraldine Brooks. I've attempted a couple of books of hers, like Gilead, and I think there was some other book of hers, and I just don't get into her books. This is a Pulitzer Prize winner, though, so it's gonna go over there with Night Watchman. We can hang out together and maybe. Yeah. Next book is The Lincoln Highway. I got this at a library book sale read. It was not $4. It was like pennies because I think I picked it up in the fill a bag for $1 day. I don't know that I'm ever going to get to this. I at one point knew what this book was about and thought it was interesting. I'm pretty sure it's historical fiction. I've wanted to read something by Immortals, but that hasn't happened yet. I don't know that it's going to happen anytime soon. It's not a priority. The next book is Underworld by Don DeLilio. This sounds fascinating. To me, this is a book like that just screams yummy chunkiness. Uh, I don't know if I'm gonna like his writing style. Like, I've read the first page and I'm like, do I just need to get through it or whatever? And I have heard that the beginning of this book can be like a little bit of a hurdle to get through. I'll probably see if there is an audiobook of this because that may help with that. I specifically bought this used because I wanted to get the version that had the Twin Towers in it and the bird that looks like a plane. And yeah, this, that's all I'm going to say about that. Can actually fit this over here. Doesn't want to go. So go there in the lower shelf. Yes. Success. All right. I'm going to turn this baby around and go through the other side. I don't know if I'm going to show you that because I have the feeling with these books up here that chaos is about to ensue. I'm already looking at this top shelf right here. And I've got questions because I know this ain't right. Because I'm seeing Bleak House, which I'm not planning on unhauling that. And I see the Black Tulip. Not planning on unhauling that. Cole, what did you put over here? What is happening over here? I see Betrothed, which I just bought. Barchester Chower. Yeah. Oh, time out. I gotta fix this situation here because this is not correct. I don't know why these books on this top shelf here are here because I plan on reading all of them. Okay, we'll start here. With The Fortunes of Richard Mahoney. So this is a bind up of 3 books. All of them are about Richard Mahoney. One, I saw this was a nice chunky book, and it's a modern classic, so I may like it, but it's a bit of a commitment. So, and it's I think more than anything, it's low on my priority of modern classics, and I was running out of room, so something had to go. So this was one of them. So we'll put him back over there because he belongs. The next one is Catherine by Anya Seton. This was a historical fiction that sounded really fascinating. However, I went to start reading it and I realized that they all very historically um, speak in the older form of English that would have been appropriate, and I wasn't ready for that, and I'm not here for that. Like I don't want it to be that deeply historical. Though good on this author. So, but if you're looking for something like that, this seems like this would be very accurate, even all the way down to the dialect of English that they're speaking or version of English that they're speaking, whichever it is. I don't know. I'm not that into that. So that's at risk of being unhauled and probably will be, to be honest. I'll give it one more try. I read like a page of it one time and was like, oh no. So I'll try it one more time and we'll see. The next book is Hanta Yo. Again, another historical fiction. I don't recall what this one was about. I have a lot of historical fiction. I was running into the same problem as with my modern fiction, where I was just running out of room to house it. And so I picked a few historical fictions that were going to have to go, and this was one of them. So this is at risk of being unhauled. The next book that I have is Things We Lost to Water. I haven't taken my little sale sticker off. This got recommended to me. It's a short book, but I've had it for quite a while and I haven't read it. So I was looking to get rid of some, well, really move over some TBR vets and kind of consider them at risk. So this was one of them. I think partially because I don't even remember what it's about. Another book is The Power of One, a historical fiction, 1939. So during World War II. I'm not a huge World War II historical fiction person, so it's at risk of being unhauled. I'm not going to say that anymore. I'm going to try not to say that anymore. It just keeps coming out. The next book that's at risk of being unhauled is The Golden Bowl by Henry James. My classics area is also very full. So if I had to get rid of one book, I've got a couple of books by Henry James. I'm pretty sure I can get this one at the library, though I better check that because there's definitely other books by Henry James that I own that I could definitely get at the library, and I'm not sure that this is one. So we'll see. Evelina by Frances Burney is at risk of being unhauled because I tried reading this and I did not enjoy the opening few pages. I did not enjoy the way the letters were written. I did not enjoy the way it was written. And I also have Camilla and Cecilia, and I've read the beginning of those, and they're much more fluid. This one was very choppy to me. So we'll see whether or not I read it. This was not a cover buy, but basically a book format buy. I love Everyman's Library editions. They're hardcovered books. I found this somewhere, or maybe it was at a library used sale, so I was able to pick it up for very little, and I did not have a lot of time, so I actually just don't know anything about what this book is about. I literally bought it because I just love these editions of books, and so I wanted to maybe try reading it. It's a collection of short stories by Irene. You can read her last name because I can't pronounce it. At risk of being unhauled if I don't like those short stories. This is at risk of being reshelved. Brave New World. I'll read this eventually, but it doesn't need to take up space on my shelf. I can put it on my husband's bookshelf. So that's the story with that. Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. I read this in high school, maybe. And I'm just at the point where I was thinking I wanted to read it again. I don't know that I do, and I'm not going to any soon. And again, I can get it at the library. I have here another Neil Stephenson's book, Cryptonomicon. Um, of the two books that I have by him, this is the one that I'm less interested in reading. I know nothing about it, and I do know it's more sci-fi, if I recall correctly, which is why I'm more interested in the historical one, because like I said, sci-fi is really not my favorite genre. Well, that's it. Since half this shelf was actually books that I'm keeping and don't know why they were over here anyway, I now actually have about, well, you can't even see it. I have about half a shelf on this that's empty, which is good because I'm sure I will be DNFing books in the future. I am a DNFer. That's my at risk of being unhauled cart. You probably know that now because unless I edited it out, I said at risk of being unhauled. Who knows how many times? Maybe I'll get really fancy and I'll do like a little counter thing. Probably not. Let's not kid ourselves. It's already enough just to edit these videos, right? Have you read any of those books? Do you like them? Are there things that I should consider? Let me know. Because otherwise, you might see them in an unhaul video soon. So if you think there's something that needs to go back on my TBR shelf, please let me know. All right, that's it for today. I need to go to work soon. So hope you're having a good day. Hope you're having a good week. And hope you're finding books that you find are noteworthy. Because I'm still looking. Are you?